ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into Part 5 of the series What If Deku Had Unknow Adaptability Quirk. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. In the next half hour, the entire Yakuza group was arrested en masse by the police gathered by Night Eye. Midoriya was sitting in Overhaul's office when Night Eye bursts in. He looked at Midoriya sitting in a leather chair with a white-haired little girl hugging him asleep while reading the research papers Overhaul had given him. Speaking of Overhaul, he was standing by the side of the chair like a butler. Overhaul had taken off his mask and gloves, and he was slightly shaking while standing by, but his face did not show his discomfort. To the side of the room was a pile of unconscious bodies still tied up. Invincible, can you tell me why I'm seeing any of this? I needed to pass time until you got here, so what else was I supposed to do? You could have helped us with the rest of the Yakuza upstairs, and why is Overhaul shivering while serving you like a butler? You could have handled it, and I got a gift from the higher-ups. So just get these villains upstairs. All right, it's been fun having you as my butler. Dispel. Overhaul immediately dropped to the ground and started to look around for something. Not finding it, he started to freak out. And not clean. He started to claw into his face where Midoriya touched him, so Midoriya stopped him immediately by re-establishing control. Overhaul calms down and pulls a handkerchief out to wipe his face. I apologize for having you see that, my king. No worries. Midoriya touches Overhaul and uses his quirk to heal his face, causing him to squirm slightly. Night Eye looked at the scene with an incredulous expression. We're leaving. Appearing outside using a warp gate carrying Eri in his arms, there was a large perimeter of police and emergency vehicles on standby. Night Eye came through the gate and called some police to escort the tied-up villains. An EMT ran up to Midoriya to check on the girl in his arms. Looking her over, they wanted to check under the bandages, so they told Midoriya to wake her up. Midoriya gently stirred her awake. Eri opened her eyes and was startled by the change of scenery. Her new wings burst out from her back and wrapped themselves around both her and Midoriya. Eri, it's okay, they're here to help. Eri slowly retracted the wing, looking at the people around her wearily. They'll need to check under the bandages. Is that okay? Eri looked scared. Just don't leave, okay? I'll be just by your side. The EMT slowly and gently removed the bandages. Her arms and legs were covered in old scars older than her. They looked almost fake, like someone just painted them on. Eri flinched when the EMT got closer to check on the scars. Hey Eri, it's okay. Do you want to sleep until they're done checking? She nods. Sleep. She closes her eyes and falls asleep. The EMT continued the checkup and determined that she was malnourished and lacked nutrients that she would normally get if she was outside regularly. They recommended that Midoriya go with the girl to the hospital for further testing. Midoriya left the scene, noticing the people who had their phones up recording. The next day, the whole incident was broadcasted on the news. Hero trainee Invincible takes down Yakuza group was an attractive headline for many. Night Eye publicized the report for the incident, which stated that Invincible, while disguised, encountered the leader of the Yakuza group and discovered that they were using the biological material of a little girl to create quirk-destroying drugs, along with the antidote to build a monopoly rise to power with the ultimate goal of the complete eradication of quirks. The entire Yakuza group was taken into custody mostly peacefully, as the elites were preoccupied by Invincible. The public reacted to the report positively, as only the end of the operation was recorded by the public, meaning that the matter was handled quietly and not disrupting their day-to-day lives with damaged roads and buildings. Video of Invincible gently caring for the little girl had garnered a sizable female fanbase, and along came speculation of his love life. Shirtless photos from the sports festival had become popular online as his stans made fan edits or thirsted for him. Eri had been taken into UA and adopted by Nizu, who allowed 13, Cementos, and Midoriya to help look after the child while he took over her education. He found it a nice challenge, as he hadn't had the opportunity to teach a child so young, to truly see how he could mold the next generation. Tenko and his group have been in therapy. The ones who needed it most were mainly Twice, who was still suffering from years of fear and paranoia, and Toga, who had issues with their quirk messing with her psyche. Dabi, on the other hand, was struggling to decide if he wanted to reveal himself to Todoroki. They weren't a danger to the public anymore, but they had a long way to go before they could join them. The vials of quirk-destroying drugs were given to Nizu as Izuku trusted him to keep them safe for the future. What he was going to do with them was now his prerogative. 2 months passed and UA was having their annual school festival where the school is open to the public and classes are encouraged to conduct an event. Class 1 was in the dorms discussing what they were going to do. Mineta immediately suggested they do a maid cafe, which was soundly rejected by the girls. Midoriya then piped up to suggest something. Building off of Mineta's idea, how about a themed restaurant? The class can sell food themed after themselves, which can be a nice boost to their image. The class began excitedly thinking of what foods they would best represent them. Momo created some pen and paper to write down some of the ideas. Mineta, though disappointed they weren't doing a maid cafe, was satisfied with them wearing their hero costumes. He subconsciously voiced the thought, resulting in Tsuyu smacking him in the back of his head. After a few days, their plan was finalized. The menu consisted of 20 items, each based on each of the class members. One of the more unique ones was Todoroki's fried ice cream, which was a blob of ice cream wrapped in a pastry that is fried together for a few seconds. This was suggested by Midoriya as Todoroki only wanted cold soba as his dish, which didn't fit a cafe menu. Along with that was Bakugo's hot blast ice cream, which had hot sauce as a main ingredient. Many in the class felt that the ice cream would be disgusting, but after trying it, it tasted pretty good, and they liked the unique flavor experience. The class was decorated with their respective colors and signature gadgets. Midoriya was going to be the main chef, using his clones to fill up the kitchen staff, while the rest of the class focused on serving the guests. Sato was having trouble deciding on a single dish, so he will be running his own confectionery making the pastries. Kaminari suggested they have live music playing and nominated Jiro to provide. She initially refused to do it, but after a few more in the class decided to join her, she agreed. Before the performance, the girls will be the main force pulling in customers, but since there were so few of them, Midoriya decided to try something to help them out. His body starts to mold and shift as sounds of writhing flesh cause some to go green in the face. After it was done, Midoriya looked a lot more feminine, assets included, which Mineta screeched excitedly about. Searching for a mirror, Midoriya sees. Midoriya was surprised by the change and began to check herself out. The girls were also excited by this and decided to have this form dubbed as Girl Doriya walking around the festival advertising the cafe. The day of the festival came as Wana was making final preparations. They were missing a few ingredients as some in the class tried to help cook some of the items. Midoriya left some clones in the class to help set up the cafe while he went out to the supermarket. After getting the supplies, Midoriya decided to walk back to UA to do an impromptu patrol. Walking by a cafe, he sees a recognizable duo. An older gentleman wearing a fancy getup and a smaller red-haired woman in much the same clothes at a tea shop. These two were the Gentle Criminal and La Brava, who were quite popular on the internet for recording their schemes. Midoriya warped the groceries back to UA and walked up to them. Gentle, spotting Invincible walking up to their table, quickly grabbed La Brava and took off into the air right into a warp gate. Appearing in front of Invincible, Gentle put La Brava behind him. "Hey, Gentle just wanted to talk." Gentle looked confused. Usually heroes would be telling them that they were under arrest. "Why are the both of you out and about in your costumes?" Gentle was compelled to answer. "We were going to infiltrate UA's festival to show that civilians aren't safe." Gentle quickly tried to cover his mouth after he spoke. "Then we're going to have a problem. Going around and messing with a festival isn't going to spread your message to the right people. I get what you're trying to do, but if it will hurt the public, you will be simply branded as villains." Gentle tried to run again, but both he and La Brava were immediately wrapped in green bands, preventing them from moving. "Sorry about this, but you're not being arrested. I just have someone who would love to meet you." Warping them back into UA, they appeared just outside of Nizu's office. The doors opened to the office where Nizu was looking through some documents. Looking up to see the villain duo tried up by Midoriya, he knew that it was going to be a busy week. Leaving Nizu to handle the criminals, Midoriya returned to the cafe to see it in full swing. Packed tables full of satisfied customers. A few younger men were keeping their eye on the Girlderia clones who were walking by passing out flyers. Many of them were driven off by Mineta, who called them all pedos for leering at underage girls. Midoriya jumped in behind the kitchens to see how operations were running. The kitchen was open to the dining room, providing a spectacle as their food was created by clones with a variety of quirks to speed up the cooking process. It was nearing noon when Cementos walked in with Eri, who was looking around in wonder at the decorated cafe. Midoriya Prime walked out to greet them. Eri saw him and excitedly ran up and hugged him. "Hey Eri, how are you enjoying the festival?" She began to excitedly and quickly explain all that she saw today, but she mentioned that she couldn't wait to see the restaurant when she saw the Girlderia clones. Midoriya led both Cementos and Eri to an open table and told them to order whatever they wished. Cementos wanted Ida's Zoom Zoom coffee, and Eri wanted Midoriya's dish, which was a green caramel apple with rainbow sprinkles, along with Aoyama's Sparkle Sparkle Splash. After a few minutes, their orders were ready. Eri was wowed by the sparkly apples and drink while Cementos comfortably enjoyed his coffee. Eri carefully took a bite of the apple, and her face lit up in glowing happiness. As Eri was eating, the show was about to start. The light dimmed and spotlights pointed at the stage. Jiro was on the mic and bass with Kaminari and Tokoyami on the guitar, Momo on the piano, and surprisingly Bakugo on the drums. They performed a song personally written by Jiro. The guests fell into the atmosphere of the performance and began to dance. Eri was a bit uncomfortable with the large crowd, so Midoriya picked her up and placed her on his shoulders. The special effects on stage were managed by Mineta along with a clone to help make sure everything went well. After the performance, the crowd cheered as the musicians bowed in thanks. Months passed as Todoroki and Bakugo went to their remedial lessons for their provisional licenses. They have been going to them diligently, though Bakugo keeps harping on about everyone else not slacking off so that he will be challenged by the class. The hero Billboard chart JP was drawing near. Everyone except for Todoroki was in the lounge waiting for the event to begin. The class was speculating on who was going to be in the top 10. Of course, All Might was still number 1, though at a decreased capacity. The event began as the announcers started it off. The top 10 were introduced in descending order, starting with number 10, who was Gang Orca, who was followed by the rest of the top 10s. Each hero spoke of their new goals, or a reinforcement of their resolve. At number 1 was All Might, who went on stage in Small Might form. The audience quieted down as he was given the microphone. "Hello everyone, I am here for maybe the last time. My time limit has been dropping as I wind down my activities as a hero. I have been this nation's symbol for 35 years, upholding the peace for all that time. I said many years ago that new heroes will need to rise to hold up this society. The time has come, and I look forward to seeing what they all could do. Go beyond. Plus Ultra. Plus Ultra. Die All Might." A gun barrel could be seen above the crowd as it fired. Time slowed as the crowd waited for the shot to land, but it never did. In the path of the bullet appeared a green portal swallowing the bullet. The crowd looked at the portal as it vanished. In front of the assailant, a larger green portal opened and from it Invincible walked through. The attacker fired his gun at him, but every bullet that hit him crumpled and fell to the floor. Midoriya grabbed them by the neck and used confession. "Who are you with?" "What? I'm alone." Fiction. Midoriya's eyes widen as he uses barrier to cover the entire hall and stage. A bullet impacts the outside of the barrier, causing it to ripple. Midoriya scanned the outside and found a sniper on a rooftop, quickly packing away their weapon. Warping him into the barrier without his gun, he is wrapped in green construct bands that extend to the ground to keep him upright. The same happens to the first assailant. "Now this is all of you." Fact. Just then security pushed their way to Midoriya's location and cuffed the attackers while thanking Midoriya for his help. One of the onlookers walked up to Midoriya, phones in hand. "Hi, Chitose Kazuki from Shueisha Publishing. I think I speak for everyone in the nation that we thank you for protecting All Might. I wanted to ask you, why did you step in? Surely there are security measures that would have ensured that All Might was protected. When I saw the barrel in the crowd, I knew I needed to act." All Might had already used his time for the day, and using any more would have further reduced the time he had as a hero. I stepped in because who wouldn't? I'm sure everyone watching, even the heroes on stage, wanted to step in even if they were the ones that would have gotten shot. I see. Will you be staying for the rest of the event? No, I won't. I'll need to go back to the dorms. They should be very surprised that I just disappeared from the couch. Wait, before you go. Do you have anything to say to the villains that plan to strike All Might again? Midoriya looked around and found the camera recording the event, looking straight into the camera as it zoomed closer. To those who hide in shadow, to those who scurry when the light hits your deadened eyes clouded with the desire to maim and do evil, your time draws near, for we will always be here. A warp gate appears behind Midoriya, swallowing him whole, leaving behind an empty space where he once was. A few days had passed, and the expected rise in crimes was a lot lower than the public expected from the supposed last appearance of the symbol of peace. The attempted assassination of the retiring All Might had shocked the nation, as well as the sudden intrusion of Invincible. Shueisha Publishing released their impromptu interview with Invincible. The public agreed with his opinions, and there was speculation that Midoriya was more than ready to replace All Might as the new symbol of peace, or at least the new #1 hero. The recording of Invincible stopping the would-be assassins was making rounds on news stations and the internet. The most impactful part of it was his final lines directed at the villains. Many felt like it was something every hero should aspire to, become so great villains dare not approach the light of peace. Invincible's fame skyrocketed after the event. The successor of the symbol of peace, a title that was tacked onto his already lofty hero name. Every day Midoriya had to warp to places and use Doppelganger if he was outside of UA, as people would be waiting to spot him and alert a massive crowd who wanted the autograph of a rising hero. His reluctance only encouraged them, as if one of them could get it, then that was the only chance they get a rare item from a rising hero. Now in one of the mock cities, the classes 1A and 1B were gathered in front of their homeroom teachers. Today was a special training day, as the two classes will be working together as a team to defeat villains. The class was wondering who the villain would be until they noticed that Midoriya was gone from where he was standing before. I'm glad you have caught on quickly. Today's training will be against a villain who has an overwhelming advantage against you all. He wins if he destroys the city, eliminates all civilians, and beats or captures all of you, while the classes win if they can save 50% of the civilians or defeat the villain. Midoriya will be limited to All Might's fighting style during his exam to give you all a bit of an edge. The students nodded and began planning their approach. Bakugo, being the arrogant hothead he was, found their planning stupid and wanted to just rush at Midoriya. When the class told him that was just going to get him eliminated, it got under his skin. When the training started, he blasted himself into the city. The plan that the classes had come up with was to have their strongest run interference, while the rest of them tried to save as many civilians as possible. Just as the classes were about to split up, something fell from the sky into the middle of their group. It was the body of Bakugo, unconscious. The classes looked around trying to find Midoriya, but he was nowhere to be seen. Bakugo was carried away by some Metabots as the class spread out into the city. The distraction team consisted of the strongest in class, people who could tank a hit and run away. As the group was running through the city, an air blast launched them back. They looked up to see buildings destroyed in a cone shape, and at the end of it, Midoriya stood casually. Before any of them could think, Midoriya was already in front of them. They sent a force this small to stop me. What a joke. Midoriya flicks, pushing the air in front of him and pushing the assault group into the ground. Kirishima pushed himself up quickly and rushed Midoriya, who just stood there, and took it. Kirishima kept punching and punching, but the blows did nothing to Midoriya, though it had brought some time for the others to get up. They too began to hit Midoriya, having the same effect. A few of them backed off as a wave of ice traveled and encased Midoriya in a gigantic glacier. Breaking out of it, Midoriya saw that the group was gone. The rest of the class was transporting the civilians to the rescue zone when 20% of civilians have been eliminated. The announcement startled the classes. It had barely been a few minutes, and they only had 80% left in the game. The class was starting to panic, but Momo got them under control, and they kept to the plan. After a few minutes, they had saved 45% of the civilians and started to rush for the final 5%. They searched around the entire city, but they found no one, that is until they spotted Midoriya standing in the plaza surrounded by the remaining civilians. What do we do now? He for sure already saw us. Some of us will have to distract him enough so the rest of us can save as many civilians as possible. The classes nod. They send anyone with a ranged quirk which can cause dust to float and obscure Midoriya's vision. Once they were ready, they all fired at once. From all around Midoriya were a variety of quirks and a few smoke bombs which obscured both him and the civilians. The heroes rush in, but before they can grab any of the civilians, the dust is blasted away, revealing Midoriya standing there with his hands together alone, now surrounded by the classes. 50% of civilians have been eliminated. The classes were shocked by this. Where were the remaining civilians? They had checked every building. Finally, things can get exciting. You all have been running around like rats, avoiding me like the plague. Now, I think it's time I actually hunt. Midoriya disappeared and reappeared with the ranged assault group unconscious around him. The remaining heroes looked apprehensive but stood ready to face whatever was next, making Midoriya smile at the sight. He disappears once more, this time taking each and everyone down one by one, causing some in the group to lose their cool and run, but they never get far as they become the next targets. Eventually, only Midoriya remained standing around unconscious bodies. Villain wins. Midoriya warped the unconscious students to a recovery tent where he was reprimanded by Recovery Girl for making her stay late. Bakugo was the first to wake up. He looked around, still ready to fight. Midoriya wrapped him in green bands so he wouldn't destroy anything. Calm down. The training is over. Bakugo's face dropped and anger reappeared. What the hell happened? Bakugo looked around the room, seeing the still unconscious class. They needed your help. You could have been the key to this, but you faced me alone. If all of them couldn't do anything, then they are just weak. And what does that say about you? You left them behind so you could prove that you were the best. That you could finish this exercise before they get the chance to encounter me. I knocked you out, picked up your unconscious body, and threw you into the group. Do you know what happened? They got too cautious. They would never risk getting closer to you. That's right. They weren't willing to take risks because they didn't want to end up like you. A missing piece. A liability. They needed all the strength they had, and you threw that notion away for what? Your pride. They needed someone who knew me, knew how I moved, how I would handle this exercise. But I don't know a thing about you. Ever since you got here, you've only gotten stronger and stronger. Every step of the way, you were always in mine. The first training, USJ, the sports festival, Stain, Island. After All for One, I didn't know what to think. All Might had said he was going to retire, to give up. After everything, I couldn't be like him. I have to be number one forever and always. Winning and being on top doesn't have to be all there is to be a hero. Hasn't UA shown you that? Hasn't All Might shown you that? There are a lot more different heroes other than All Might. Winning doesn't just mean beating villains. 'Cause even if the villain is captured, if civilians are dead, then it will always be a tragedy. Your desire to win is not the problem, it's your focus. If all you care about is winning, you will find nothing but resentment for everyone better than you in any way you perceive. Bakugo was quiet for a moment, thinking of the past before UA. He remembers first learning of Midoriya's quirk. It was weak, sure, but subconsciously he knew it would grow to surpass him. He tried to beat the nerd down, but all that did was make him stronger. By the time they were in middle school, groups of people from other schools regularly challenged Midoriya to a fight, with Midoriya always coming out stronger every time. He wanted to be the best, but the game was rigged from the start. He felt unlucky he wasn't born with Midoriya's quirk. He wanted all that strength, the invulnerability, and the presence he exuded when he faced villains. The fight with All for One was a prime example of such. Through all the attempts by the heroes to stop the beast that was All for One, Midoriya stood tall, facing a monster, and with a single blow defeated what All Might failed to. He looked back at Midoriya and spoke with a soft tone. "Leave me alone." Midoriya silently got up and left, leaving Bakugo to his thoughts. It was after Christmas when the class was to open up a hero agency on Nabu Island. They were to stay there until a suitable hero could take over their duties. The class was excited when they heard where they were going. Many of them thought it would be a nice vacation away from all the chaos. It has been a week since then, and seeing that the island had around 1,000 inhabitants, the class has been handling small tasks for the locals around the island. The class was stationed in an old building, taking calls and going out to aid when available. Midoriya had mostly been playing chaperone, warping the class around the island to where they needed to be. One of the calls was for a missing child named Katsuma Shimano. Most of the class was out, so Midoriya decided to take it. Warping into the air, he looked down onto the island looking for the little boy. He found him on a hill near the edge of town, overlooking the harbor, and flew down to him. "Hey, are you Katsuma?" The boy looked excited to see Izuku, but before he could respond, a little girl slid down a slide and stood between the two of them. "What kind of hero are you? Look how long it took you to get here." She showed her phone to Midoriya. It displayed a timer reading 7 minutes and 32 seconds. "I'd say that's pretty good, though I'm an exception. Not every hero can fly and teleport. Still something could have happened when you were searching. Come on, Katsuma, let's leave these lazy heroes." The boy, looking unsure, followed after the girl. Midoriya shook his head and sighed. That little girl who goes by Mahoro Shimano seemed to have a thing for hating heroes ever since they arrived on the island, always dragging her brother along with her schemes. Midoriya's phone rang as someone needed to get back to base. It was the end of the day. Everyone was tired from running around all day, minus Midoriya, who was never tried for too long, and Bakugo, who just stayed at base reading magazines with the excuse of guarding the agency from villains. From the hallway, many of the townspeople came in carrying plates of food as a thank you for their hard work, which the class appreciated. Later at night, Midoriya was in the air relaxing, overlooking the lit-up town, when Midoriya spotted Katsuma running towards the agency building. Flying down toward him, Katsuma quickly yelled at Midoriya, "There's a villain in the castle ruins. You want to come with me to check it out?" The boy nods as Izuku opens a warp gate to the ruins. Walking through, Izuku sees a giant mantis thing in the distance. The villain sees them and runs towards Izuku, who flicks, sending an air cannon at the beast. The blast goes through the beast, not affecting it, or the blast like it was intangible. Izuku looks around using quirk sight and sees Mahoro hidden behind a wall. The mantis lunges at Midoriya, its claw aiming to strike him down, but it goes right through him. Mahoro gets out of her hiding spot with a pout. "Can't you at least act scared?" "Can't really do that when I know what your quirk is. It's pretty good. You could summon any hero you want to scare off bad guys. Then why can't I scare you?" "Maybe I'm not scared of mantises." Her pout deepens as she drags Katsuma away. "Bye, Mr. Invincible. Have a nice night, Katsuma." The next day came around. Midoriya woke up pretty early and did his morning routine. After his run, he had his breakfast as he scanned around the island. Looking out toward the direction of the harbor, he sees something he thought he dealt with. All for one, but it looked minuscule, surrounded by 5 quirks along with another quirk to the side by itself. Midoriya ate the rest of his food, put on his hero costume, and messaged the class that he was going to check something out. Warping above where he saw the quirks, he sees a ferry with only 4 people who were on the bridge. Using Warp Gate, Midoriya teleported the vessel closer to the middle of the ocean. The villains noticed this and ran up to the top deck, looking around to see who moved them. Midoriya turned off flight and fell straight down onto the top deck and stopped with a quiet thud as soon as his feet touched the deck, like stepping down from a curb. He walked towards the white-haired villain who had all for one and used confession. "Welcome to the middle of the Sea of Japan. What were you doing going to Nabu Island?" "I am here to get a quirk to bring me back to full health." "Who are you?" "Seeing that you need to ask that while your groupies are tense tells me you've been under a rock." "I'm the unstoppable hero. Invincible, and I was the one that took down All for One. I can assume the good doctor had given you All for One, even if it's a weakened copy." The villain activated scanning as his eyes turned yellow. Looking at Invincible, he sees a rainbow of flame shooting into the air. He had never seen anything like this before, and it scared him. He turned around to try and run, but Invincible was already in front of him, blocking his way. The villain raised his hands and fired light purple lasers from his fingertips. The shots curve around Invincible to try and find a weak point. The laser exploded on contact, obscuring him from view and making the villain take a step back. Everyone surround him. He's not down yet. The other members ran around the dust cloud, vigilant of any changes. The dust slowly cleared, revealing Invincible completely unharmed. "That's interesting. I have something quite similar. Impure beam plus dark ball." Invincible raised a finger as a dark ball floated at the tip of it. A dark purple laser shot out at the white-haired villain, who raised multiple yellow barriers to stop the attack. The laser pierced through and broke a few layers, but didn't get all the way through. The villain was breathing heavily with purple veins running across his face. The red-headed girl of the group ran towards him. 9, are you okay? I'm fine, Slice. Keep your eye on him. I just need to get close. Oh, no need. For all the fanfare, come as close as you like. In fact, I'll let you touch me. 9 looked confused, but decided to not do what he said as Invincible reached his hand out. The other two seemed to have gotten impatient during the standoff as red mummies connected to one of them rushed Invincible, who simply waved his arm, causing the mummies to unravel. The other member had a wolf-like mutation, Quirk with bird talons for hands, tried to punch him, but as his fist made contact it had no effect. Slice, seeing this, fired strands of hair from her head at Invincible, which also explodes. With a dust cloud obscuring Invincible's vision, the villains spread apart to find a way to escape the ship. The Wolfman tried to fly away with his newly grown wings, but green constructs grabbed onto him and pulled him towards Invincible, who grabbed him by his head, taking his quirk. Chimera taken. Upon losing his quirk, the monstrous features he had receded revealed a large black man with the same dreadlocks he had before. He fell to the ground on his hands and knees, looking at his changed form. What did you do to me? I took away your quirk. Tell me, why do you follow 9? He spared me after decimating a city. He said he saw in me what he once was. Ostracized for something we had no control over. I followed so that we can show them who is truly at the top of the food chain. Sleep. The man falls unconscious and is sent off to the agency's holding cell. Invincible looked around, and the other three were already gone. So much for camaraderie. Using Quirk sight, he sees 9 and Slice walking slowly on the lower deck, and the mummy guy walking around and creating more mummies. Deciding to save the best for last, he warped to his location. The villain was running around using their quirk on any object in sight until he bumped into Invincible, who appeared in front of him. Quickly, he sent his golems at him, which were easily smacked away, causing them to unravel. The man panicked, sending his minions at Invincible while trying to run away. Eventually, he finds himself at a dead end with a few minions to his name. He turns around to see Invincible looking at him with a bored look. Well, I guess this is the end of the line. The villain doesn't respond as he sends his red bandages at Invincible, wrapping them around him. The tension in the villain's shoulders disappears after seeing him converted. Sigh, for all the strength, you're pretty careless. The bandages suddenly exploded, burning the bandages in blue flame. The villain's eyes widen as he backs away into a wall. Yeah, that's on purpose, like how you led me to believe you had no more tricks. Invincible grabbed onto his head and took his quirk. Mummy taken. Sleep. The villain falls unconscious and is sent to the holding cell as well. Walking out from the depths of the ferry, he sees a small lifeboat driving away quickly. Opening a warp gate in front of it, it didn't have a chance to steer clear from the portal, which sent them crashing back onto the top deck. Invincible warped himself up there and saw 9 on the floor with Slice, trying to help him up. That's enough games. It's time the both of you not run like cowards. 9 gets up, supported by Slice. Standing fully, he pushes himself off of her. Then what are we supposed to do? You've already gotten Chimera and Mummy. Your intrepid leader still hasn't shown me his full strength. Like that weather quirk he's got. 9 furrowed his brow, his eyes glowed red as the clouds above collected and darkened. Flashes of light could be seen in the spinning mass. Lightning came crashing down on Invincible, arching across the surface of the deck, making it glow red hot. Midoriya stood in the middle of the destruction, lightning still arching across his body. Not B. 2 large blue metallic serpents flew at him, crashing into his palms with a loud clang. Bad, and along with this, I can see why you took the quirks you did. Unfortunately, I'm going to need you to return them. Midoriya appeared in front of 9, his hand near his face, but an explosion launched 9 away. 9 was pointing the yellow barrier at Invincible. Slice was now right next to Invincible. She turned her hair into large blades, slashing and stabbing at him, but every strike glanced off his body, causing sparks to fly off. In the middle of the flurry, an arm reached out and grabbed onto Slice's face. Slice taken. Sleep. Slice falls unconscious, her hair falling limp as she is warped away. Invincible looked toward 9 and slowly walked toward him. 9 looked at the scene with fear and a tinge of irony. So this is how hopeless it felt for them to fight me. 9 responded by using every offensive ability he has. Not seeing a point in not going all out, the purple tubes on 9's back began to inject their contents into Nine, making the markings on his face recede, and he took off his mask, revealing an angry scowl. His eyes glowed red, and the clouds above intensified, and he raised his hand and summoned the yellow shield, which shot out an air cannon at Invincible. The cannon blew some of his hair back, but otherwise, it looked like a gust of wind blew by. Purple lasers fired from Nine's hands, trying to shoot Invincible away, but he just walked through them unaffected as the lasers curved around his body. The metallic serpents flew at Invincible, striking like snakes as lightning from above channeled through the serpents, increasing their speed. The onslaught continued until Invincible was standing a few feet from a tired and almost completely purple Nine, panting heavily and barely standing, looking at Invincible, who had a bored expression on his face. "Anything you want to say before this all ends?" "I was going to change this world. No one would have to feel like they don't belong. That is a noble goal. Unfortunately, you done it entirely the wrong way." Midoriya placed his hand on his head. "Weather manipulation taken. All for 1 weekend taken. Scanning taken. Hydra taken. Airwall taken. Bullet laser taken. Cell activation type A taken. Sleep. Warping 9 back to base." Midoriya gets a call. "Hello. Midoriya speaking." "Midoriya, where are you right now?" "Oh, just the middle of the ocean." "Did our villains take the restraints well? They seemed so out of it when they got here." "What did you do to them?" "I just roughed them up a little. They'll be fine." "I'll be right back. I need to park the ship they stole." When Midoriya returned on the ferry, the townspeople were at first confused why a ferry was coming to the island so early. Midoriya flew above the ferry and landed near the crowd to explain the situation. After hearing the whole explanation, the townspeople were glad that the villains were not able to get onto the island and thanked Midoriya for his work. After making sure the ferry was properly secured, he warped back to the agency for another debriefing to the class. Everyone was glad that the villains were taken care of, though Bakugo was mad he didn't get a hit in. After that, Midoriya warped back into UA and Nizu's office, surprising the Chimera for a moment. "Midoriya, what a surprise. Has your time on the island been fruitful? It is a nice change of pace, but that's not why I'm here. I'm guessing you know about Nine." "Of course. Did you encounter him? Is the class safe?" "Yeah, they're fine. I was able to intercept them before they were able to get on the island. I wanted to know if you can get me in contact with the people Nine stole from." Nizu was able to do so, and Midoriya visited each and everyone to return what was taken from them. All of them were extremely grateful to have their quirks back. After returning all but one, he warped back into the island. The rest of their time there went pretty well. Katsuma had been showing up a lot more near Midoriya, always watching him help out around the town with an inspired look in his eye. "Hey, Katsuma." "Hi, sir." "Oh, don't call me that. It makes me feel old." "That's an Edge-shot pin you have. You really like heroes, don't you?" "I want to be a hero, just like Daddy." "That is a great dream to have." "What kind of hero is your dad?" "The greatest." "I'm going to be just like him." "Then you're going to need to train. You're going to need to be strong enough to save everyone." "But my quirk isn't strong." "Don't talk about your quirk like that. You haven't even used it to its full potential." "What do you mean?" "My quirk only heals other people and myself. Big Sis just wants me to stay and be a doctor. That's the key, being able to heal yourself." "Do you know how muscles grow?" "Not really." "Then we have much to work on." For the next few days, Midoriya taught Katsuma how to train his body while making the best use of his quirk to solidify his progress and efficiency. Katsuma and Mahoro's dad came back after recovering from the villain attack. When the trio got home, Midoriya was standing at the pathway leading to their home. "Hello, hero. What caused you to visit us?" "Just here to return something." Midoriya held his hand out to the confused father, who took it. The man felt weird for a second before feeling whole. He breathed out a sigh, releasing a tension he didn't know he had. "What did you do to Daddy?" "Your dad had his quirk taken by a villain. I'm just giving it back like I did for the other quirks he stole." The kids happily hugged and thanked Midoriya for helping their dad. After a while, it was time to leave. The class got onto their ferry and was slowly pulling out of the harbor. The entire village came and waved them off, thanking them for their time there. On the way back, Midoriya was seemingly lost in thought, looking at his hand, which had a small red orb surrounded by lightning. After returning from Nabu Island, classes resumed as normal. The time they spent there was fruitful and relaxing, not counting the thwarted villain attack on the island. The media had gotten wind of the incident and praised Midoriya for handling it without disrupting the townspeople's lives. The actual fight wasn't recorded, but reports were released by the HPSC to set the public record straight. Midoriya was now in Nizu's office with Nizu, All Might, Night Eye, and Grant Torino. They were all sitting by the coffee table with a cup of tea in hand, pondering what Midoriya had told them. You want to give away All for One? Why? Do you want another Shigaraki to appear? Yes, and no Sasaki. When I said to All Might no one should shoulder the burden of peace alone, I meant it. But you will be around for a long time. Even then you could make clones of yourself and the current heroes to keep the world safe. While that is true, they will still be all a result of me. I alone would be in control of worldwide safety. I don't want to take away the dreams of so many. If I alone stand against evil, then progress will stagnate more than it already has. Every problem could be solved just by calling invincible. It will bring an end to progress. Then who do you think should get All for One? There was a kid on Nabu Island, Katsuma. His quirk is cell activation, which allows him to activate the cells in his own and others' bodies to accelerate healing. 9 was heavily modified when I met him, and he had a weaker variant of All for One, so whoever will get the quirk will need to survive a bit of pain from either their own quirk changing their body or me using overhaul to keep them alive long enough for that to happen. How about Melissa? She would love to be able to research the quirk. I could give it to her, but she will need to consent to the procedure and be informed of the risks of it. In the meantime, I'll keep looking for potential candidates. The group agreed to the proposal, but Nizu stipulated that he be the first to be informed of them to do a background check. But that wasn't all that they were going to discuss today. All Might, I think I've gotten a hang of overhaul and rewind to bring you back into your prime. Do you still want to stay number 1 for a bit longer? Your embers are almost gone. I would want nothing more, Midoriya. We should get to Recovery Girl first before we do anything. Lord knows that she'll throw a fit if she wasn't there to monitor your vitals. The procedure went well, having aged All Might back into his prime, but that couldn't be said for the embers. His time limit had increased from his previous 1 hour 40 to 3 hours. His small form no longer existed, but he had a new medium form, nicknamed Some Might. After confirming his new limits, he tried to run out to do some hero work, but was pulled by the ear by both Recovery Girl and Gran Torino. Getting sat down, Recovery Girl began to explain his new routine. To make sure he was fully healthy, he had to be monitored for a few days and be kept on a controlled diet, as he hadn't been able to eat much of anything without his stomach. It was around this time where Todoroki and Bakugo's interview was premiered. Earlier in the month, they were interviewed in the dorms. The interview was a disaster, as only recordings of Todoroki made it to air. Bakugo was completely removed from the broadcast due to his violent language. While Todoroki was shown, he wasn't interview material, only giving single-word answers to every question. The class had a good laugh at their expense, with Bakugo digging his grave deeper and Todoroki confused why the way he acted was odd. The next day, everyone was in class waiting for their afternoon training to start, when MT Lady and Midnight walked in. Students, I'm sure you recognize who this is. She is MT Lady, and she will be assisted by Midnight, and they will be helping you prepare for how you present yourselves in front of the media to the public. Hey everyone, as Aizawa said, I will be your guide to constructing a good public image. Follow me. MT Lady led the class to a field where an interview stage had been set up along with cameras and a TV displaying the stage. You all will come up and get interviewed by me, and we will critique your performance. Midoriya, you have been in the media for a while, so you will go first to set an example of how a standard interview usually goes. Midoriya walks up to the stage with a soft smile. So who are you? Cutie. The class was a bit surprised. Was this what MT Lady thought of a standard interview? Midoriya decided to go along with the role play, squinting his eyes slightly. The sudden change in his aura made some of the girls slightly slack-jawed. I'm the unstoppable hero, invincible, and my quirk is reactionary mutation, among others. Others? Oh, you mean your other abilities. There has been a lot of speculation on the abilities I've shown during the defeat of All for One. The truth is too long for this type of interview, so let's just say I've learned a lot about my quirk. Oh, you tease. Anything special you could show us? Midoriya thinks for a moment before his hand forms into a cube. Cutting the cube off, he knees it into the air. As it is falling, Midoriya flicks into a warp gate. Omnidrive sending air blasts through it to the cube from all directions. A red-hot piece of metal falls onto his newly regenerated hand. The metal cooled, and its shape was not the jagged metal everyone expected. A statuette of MT Lady was sitting in his hand of her dive-kicking a giant shark villain in the scene of her debut. Ice formed around the figurine as it cooled down further from Headsink, and Midoriya handed it to MT Lady. She carefully took the figure and examined it. Thank you. Don't mention it. A rosy atmosphere had suddenly appeared around them, which was quickly broken with a cough by midnight. MT Lady shook her hair to clear her thoughts. What are you doing? He's still in school. MT Lady fixes her hair. Thank you, Midoriya, for the figure. Usually people give me stuff for other reasons. Okay, who wants to go next? Midoriya went back to the class and Kaminari asked if Midoriya could make him a figurine of himself. Midoriya obliged and Kaminari took the figure excitedly. Minato, of course, was biting his fist with jealousy. The rest of the class goes a lot better. Each student had their flaws but weren't irredeemable, and some had their own charm, which couldn't be said for Todoroki and Bakugo, who were recommended to follow in Aizawa's footsteps to avoid the media entirely. A few days pass and UA is resuming the work studies program. Many in the class decided to go back to their previous heroes they worked with. Todoroki and Bakugo have gone together to work with Endeavor. Surprisingly enough, they must have gotten close during the remedial courses. Midoriya was debating who to go to when he had a thought. Maybe it's time I pay a certain rabbit a visit. Midoriya had just gotten off the train when Miruko landed in front of him. Someone's excited to see me. Oh, shut it, you. Glad you still remember who got you where you are. A warp gate opened under the both of them, sending them to the same clearing they trained in last time. Miruko looked around confused, but recognizing the area, she looked at Midoriya cheekily. So who's excited about this again? What kind of man keeps a lady waiting? You're not a man yet, kid. Come on. They spent the next few hours fighting in the forest. Miruko wanted to fight Midoriya when he was using his quirks, so he obliged. Using some of the more unique offensive abilities, he fired at Miruko using Impure Beam from his multiple arms, fire from a combo of Mouthful and Chimera, lighting controlled by Zeus, Slice sent exploding hairs, and Iron Underground was pulled above and molded into blades which shot at her. Miruko dodged in between the trees to dodge the projectiles and lead them into the trees. When Miruko saw an opening, she tried to take advantage of it, but each time it was thwarted by a different ability. It started with Midoriya taking the hit, then a yellow barrier, an air cannon, steel skin, spikes, fire, ice, smoke, green constructs, and bony ribs. Miruko was pushed back by an attack and was barely standing, so Midoriya stopped the attacks and caught her as her legs buckled, putting her arm around his shoulder. She was still looking down as he supported her. Hey, you okay? She looked up with a tired look with her eyes barely open. She grabbed onto Midoriya's collar and pulled him in. Midoriya became beet red and flinched slightly, but Miruko held on. He was confused. Why would she, a hero, suddenly embrace him? In fact, why hadn't preemptive warning warned him about it? He didn't have time to think as he instinctually reciprocated it. The act lasted a few more seconds before the heroine pulled away, licking her lips. Midoriya was once again stunned. Thanks for the workout, hunk. Then suddenly, as if she had rebooted, her eyes widened, and she tried to say something, but all that came out was a small Miruko's mind. Why did I do that? He gonna think I'm weird and creepy and dash. Miruko was suddenly pulled into a hug, silencing her mind. She subconsciously breathed in his scent and rubbed her head on his chest. Mirumi, are you sure you want us to be this? There had been small instances of connection during the last internship. Quick glances between the both of them. She had thought he was the one pining for her, but she had found herself missing having him around, smiling when she saw a picture of him, and was so happy to hear that he wanted to work with her. Maybe this dating thing wouldn't be so bad. Rumi looked up to Midoriya's blushed but serious and concerned face. I do. Rumi once again pulls a Zuku and embraces him. Unbeknownst to them, an old hiker heard the explosions from Slice and was on the mountain looking down at the devastation caused by Midoriya's quirk. Using his binoculars, he looked down to see them. Seeing that they were having a private moment, he looked away and hiked his way down the mountain. No way he was going to see any of the birds now that they were chased away by the noise. Ought to be young again. After they had their moment, Rumi calmed herself down and the both of them went on patrol. It started off a bit awkward, but once a villain showed up, Miruko got right back into the swing of things. Someone was in a convenience store pointing at the clerk with his fingers, which had metal tubes at the tips. The clerk was going as slow as possible to buy enough time for someone to help. Invincible opened a portal next to the robber and Miruko kicked through. The robber's finger fired when he was kicked, but the bullet was caught by Invincible before it could graze the clerk's cheek. The robber was on the floor on his back with his head being stepped on by Miruko. He tried to move his arms, but they were tied to the ground by green constructs. Quickly the police came and arrested the villain. The rest of the day went similarly to this, but after word got out that Invincible was in town, incidents died down, annoying Miruko a bit, as she still had a bit more energy to burn off. Deciding that there were too few criminals worth it to be out, the two of them agreed to go to her apartment. Getting back to Rumi's apartment, she asks Izuku to stay outside for just a second. Standing outside, he hears rustling of plastic, cardboard, and the slamming of doors. While waiting, he looked down from the walkway towards the road. Some passers-by noticed the movement and look up at him. They waved, so he waved back, but as they took out their phones, he opened a warp gate in front of him and ducked down. The passers-by looked back up to see the gate disappearing and walked away in disappointment. Using spatial awareness to make sure they're gone, he was about to get up when Rumi opened the door. Was I taking too long? No, not at all. Some people spotted me while I was waiting. Thankfully, they didn't get a picture. Well, come in before someone else sees you. Walking into the apartment, it was clear of the familiar boxes in the corner, and everything was neat. You know, I've been here before. You don't have to do all that for me. I was supposed to clean today anyway. I didn't mean anything by it. Izuku turns off his hero costume, and it unwrapped into a bracelet around his wrist. Taking his shoes off and putting them on the shoe rack, he walked to the couch and sat down. Turning on the TV, it was a news channel discussing Detnerat, a lifestyle support gear company. They have been making strides to expand into the hero support gear sector. The news anchors discussed the topic slightly before moving on to the next. Rumi handed Izuku a glass of water and sat down. She was now wearing a white shirt and some sweatpants. The both of them sat on the couch for a while, channel surfing, looking for something interesting to watch. Eventually, they got to a channel that had reruns of movies from the pre-Quirk era. It was showing the end credits of a movie they missed. Pressing the menu button, it displayed the next movies coming up. It was movies from the early 2000s, over a century ago. Deciding to leave it on that channel, Izuku went over to the kitchen to fix up some dinner. Opening the fridge, it was almost completely full of carrots stacked neatly and a half-eaten carrot cake. There were a few bits and bobs from the last time he was there, so at least she didn't throw them out. In the freezer was a few cuts of pre-packaged meat and fish. Taking some ingredients out, he decided to make a carrot stew with rice. Walking back into the living room, he sees a man on the TV getting gas for his car. A punkish kid walked up to him smoking a cigarette. Nice car. Thanks. Izuku sat down and Rumi caught him up on what he missed. They sat and watched the movie as the stew simmered. Izuku checked up on it a few times by sticking his head through a warp gate. Rumi seemed to really enjoy the movie, especially the action scenes as the main character went on a crusade to get justice for the last gift his wife left him. The movie ended with the man having just stapled his stab wound in the back of an animal clinic. Seeing that one of the dogs was scheduled to be euthanized, he opened the cage and took the dog with him. Let's go home. The movie ends with the man walking by the riverside with the dog on a leash. The same riverside his wife collapsed on, as Rumi noticed. The credits played as Izuku checked on the stew. Food's ready. Izuku fully warped into the kitchen and prepared both of their dinners. Rumi got some cushions and placed them near the coffee table. Putting the food down on the table, the next movie played. It opened with a small house in a field near a small river with a stone bridge. The camera zoomed into the house in front of the window as narration played. It spoke of the world and what country has the best food. France, they declared, specifically in Paris. They then described a chef and his fame. The narrator disagreed with his motto, anyone can cook, and believed that not anyone could cook, and he should know, as they take cooking seriously. A rat bursts out of the window holding a book. This is me. Izuku and Rumi watched the movie while eating. It was an animated movie set in Paris where a rat meets a janitor and helps him cook by pulling on his hair. It was an amusing movie to eat during as it stirred their appetite, causing the both of them to have a few extra helpings. After the movie was done, Izuku used telekinesis to move the dirty dishes to the sink and wash them as he was still sitting on the couch. The two of them spent the rest of the night watching movies. Slowly, Rumi laid onto Izuku, who put his arms around her. Eventually, the both of them fall asleep with Rumi on top, hugging him like a body pillow. Izuku woke up to Rumi hugging him, sleeping deeply. Her ears twitched as his breathing changed. "All right, we're dating now. Oh my God. What is Mom going to think?" He decided that future him would deal with the conversation as he softly caressed her silky white hair. Rumi hugged him tighter, rubbing her face into his chest. Looking over to the clock on the wall, it was 5 a.m., the time he usually woke up. Slowly, Rumi began to stir awake, pushing herself off of him, and sat on his lap as she rubbed her eyes as she stretched. "Yawn, I haven't slept that good in a while." She looked down and was stunned at their position. She was straddling her boyfriend sitting on his lap. "Morning, Rumi." Izuku sat up, now face to face with her, sitting on his lap with his hands around her waist as he embraced her. Pulling away, he was amused by the adorable blushing mess before him. "Come on, let's get ready. We have a job to do, and people to keep safe." Rumi managed to calm down, and the two of them went to get ready. Izuku wrapped to his dorm to give her some privacy, and they agreed to meet back up at 9 a.m. Warping back, Izuku cleaned himself up and went for a run. Getting back to his dorm, he got a call from the HPSC president. "Morning, Prez." "Morning to you as well, Midoriya. We have a task for you. You will be meeting the president and CEO of Detnerat, Rukia Yatsubashi." "So what did he do to get on your radar?" "Our agents have noticed a slight uptick in villain support gear. We have tried to retrieve them, but they explode when the villain is knocked unconscious. Recently, your classmates Todoroki and Bakugo had encountered a villain using these devices." "Fact. All right then, I'll do it. When is the meeting?" "Our liaison has set the time to this afternoon at 2 p.m., and he is meeting you at their HQ in Daika City on their recommendation that you and he are like-minded." "Fact. Which tells me you know what their alter ego is." "Yes. We suspect him to be a part of the Meta Liberation Army under the ideology that all quirks should be freely used even in public. I hope you understand how disastrous that would be." "Fact. Of course I do. Even if quirks are a part of you, any quirk can do some amount of damage if used improperly." "Good. Hopefully, you can get something concrete out of him. Goodbye." "Bye, Madam Prez." The president hung up the phone. Izuku looked at the time, and it was 6:47 a.m., so he looked into the Yatsubashi family. It began with someone called the Mother of Quirks. She was the one to coin the term quirk for the powers people gained. She had a son named Chikara Yatsubashi who was a quirk activist advocating for the abolishing of quirk restrictions laws. Many quirked people at the time had seen him as the voice of the minority and followed in his campaign. Nowadays, his protests are seen as acts of terrorism disguised in flowery and manipulative wording. This led to his manifesto titled Meta Liberation War, which is restricted in Japan, though a few copies seem to have cropped up here, and they're held by villains. This leads Izuku to Rukia Yatsubashi, who is the current owner of Detnerat, a company providing lifestyle support for the public and now branching out into the hero industry. Not much is known about him, but he seems to have a squeaky clean record for a businessman. It was 9 a.m. and Izuku wrapped back to Rumi's apartment. She was lounging on the couch eating a carrot. He told her he had a meeting with the CEO of Detnerat. She was a bit disappointed to not be able to spend more time with him, but she understood. The two of them went out to the clearing again, but when they got there it was still a destroyed wasteland. Izuku, seeing the destruction, floated Rumi up slightly and placed his hand on the ground. A horn grew from his forehead as he activated Rewind. The forest looked like a reversing video as debris lifted from the ground and returned to its rightful place. Izuku stopped when he saw some of the leaves retracting back into branches. He let Rumi down as she was looking at the renewed forest before her. Was that a quirk?" "Yeah, it's called Rewind. I traded for it from the little girl Overhaul had imprisoned, and you can see how it works. Never tried it on a whole forest, though." "What did you give her?" "Dragon wings. I gave her a list of quirks that would be safe for her to use, and she chose that because if she gets into trouble, she can protect herself and fly away." Smart kid. She'll be a great hero someday. That's her decision to make if she wants to be a hero. The two of them spared for a bit, so as to not tire her too much before the patrol. Izuku decided to not use any quirks and spared, using just his physical ability, just like how they did it during their first spar. Izuku matched Rumi blow for blow, so to a bystander, it would look like Miruko was fighting a doppelganger. Slowly, Izuku started to alter some of the moves to be more grounded to match how he usually fights. Rumi, noticing this, put more power into her strikes as he was now moving a lot less and not dodging. They were now unleashing a flurry of blows at each other, but Rumi was getting slower and slower, so Izuku matched her. It was around 11 a.m. when they decided to stop and go on their patrol. As it was still pretty early, the two of them decided to have brunch. Walking into a cafe, the two of them ordered their drinks and a few snacks. They sat down and waited for their order when a man in a hoodie reached his hand over the counter on the cash register while the barista had their back turned. Rumi also noticed this and gestured toward Izuku to handle it. Walking up behind the man, he puts his arm around his shoulder. The man freezes in place and slowly pulls his hand back out of the cash register. The barista turned back around to see Midoriya, holding the customer that just come in. What seems to be the problem, sir? Oh, nothing, just recognized a friend is all. Isn't that right? Why, yeah, he just caught me by surprise is all. Oh, all right then. Your order is ready for you, sir. Thanks. Midoriya levitated their order to his table, not so gently, pulling the thief with him. Sitting down, he sits the thief on a chair next to them and tied him to the chair using energy construct. The thief recognized Miruko and decided to cut his losses. Look, I'm sorry, okay, just let me return the money and you never see me again. Fact. That's awfully nice of you, but why were you stealing in the first place? I just needed some extra cash, man. Fact. For what? Listen, I owe a lot to people, and I need to pay them back. Just let me go. Fact. Unfortunately, loan sharks aren't exactly legal, so you're not going anywhere until we get them. Now, where exactly do we find them? The man was leading Miruko and Invincible to where he usually meets his lender. His name was Tamajirai, and he needed the money to pay off his inherited debt from his uncle and Bill so he could continue working to pay it off, but they changed the deal so he had no other choice. He got the money from Agatsuji Finance with an interest of 30%. Miruko and Invincible were waiting on a rooftop for their shark to swim by. It turns out that was quite literal, as a large man with a shark head walked right up to Tamajirai. Hey kid, you got the money? Why, yes. The man got out the small amount of cash he had gotten before trying to rob the cafe. The shark took a look at the money, swiped it out of his hands, and threw it angrily in his face. You really think that was enough? The boss will have your head for this. Fact. We graciously let you borrow what you needed, and you repay us like this. The shark raised his arm up and was about to punch down on Tamajirai, but his arm was restrained by green bands, and Miruko jumped down in between them, facing the shark man. Hold on, fishy. I don't think extortion is exactly legal now, is it? The shark struggles against the bands, trying to get free. Invincible flew down quickly but landed without a sound. I don't think Fishy has the brain capacity to answer. Now, where's your office? Compelled by confession, he speaks, saying that the main office of the loan sharks was nearby, hidden as an izakaya. Invincible moved the bands until the criminal's hands were in front of him and grabbed them. Sleep. The criminal stopped straining against the bands and went limp, breathing softly. Pulling metal from the nearby trash, he restrains the shark and secures him to the ground. Telling Tamajirai to stay put, he and Miruko went to the izakaya. Wanting to not disturb any of the civilians around, Invincible asked Miruko if he could deal with this quietly. We could also just bust in there to take them in. Yeah, sure, but that would cause a lot of noise and alert any villain that we are in the area. I get not wanting to disturb the public, but isn't alerting villains the whole reason we patrol? If the villains know where we are, then they can pass the information around, and the villains far from us will be emboldened to act. Okay, fair, but how are you going to do this quietly? You don't look exactly casual. Do you have a quirk for it? Invincible slowly morphed into Akatani, wearing a beat-up Gakurin whistle, so you can pretty much go anywhere. Yeah, it's how I infiltrated the Shy Hasaikai. They were using the little girl to make quirk-destroying formulas. Those bastards. All right, then I'm going to stay outside to stop their reinforcements and prevent the criminals inside from escaping. Sound like a plan, let's go. Walking to the izakaya, Akatani activated Quirk Sight to look for a group of people hidden without an obvious way to get to them. Sitting at the bar was a gruff-looking man and the chef preparing a meal. Akatani sat tiredly at the bar and sighed. Hello, customer, what will you be having? See, can I just get some water? Sure. Here. Akatani takes a huge gulp, surprising the chef slightly. Would you like another? No. See, can I sit here for a bit? I promise to move if someone wants my seat. No problem at all, young man. Not many people come here for lunch anyway. Akatani sat for a moment with his eyes closed. The gruff man spoke. Hey kid, why are you all the way down here? Shouldn't you be in school? I needed cash. Dad's sick, so I need to come out to do odd jobs, so he doesn't need to worry. Look, I meet a lot of people like you around these parts. I have a friend who is willing to let you borrow some money to get you by. He doesn't set time limits even though the interest is pretty high, but I'm sure you can pay that off quickly. You just need to get back up on your feet. Fact. Where is your friend? Follow me. The man led him to the side of the izakaya, and behind a wood board was a door. Through it was a staircase leading down with a door at the bottom. Walking through the door was a nicely furnished lobby with a door across from the entrance. There were some people on the side playing with cards while a TV overhead was showing the news. Hey boss, we have a guest. The door opened to a young Yakuza-looking man wearing a clean suit. He peeked out with a bright and yet cunning smile. Welcome to Agatsuji Finance. How may I be of service to you, Mr. Mikumo? Akatani Mikumo, sir. I heard you're a lender. Then you've heard correctly. I assume Dara told you about what we could do for you. Come in, there is much to discuss. Walking into the office, the door slammed shut behind him, leaving him alone with the boss. Where are my manners? My name is Kamarf Agatsuji. I'm the boss of this place. Now, how much do you need? Fact. 400,000 yen. Do you have that? That we do. Now you'll need to sign the contract before you can get your money. A contract appeared from a plume of flame from the Agatsuji's hand. He placed it in front of Akatani with a slight tinge of excitement. Checking in with Quirk Progenitor, the boss's quirk was called Deal. It allowed him to summon contracts at the cost of his lifespan, but whoever signs his contract will be siphoned gradually. If the contract is broken by the signer, they will lose 50% of their remaining lifespan, giving it to Agatsuji, while if Agatsuji broke it, then he will lose the same amount and age rapidly. The more lifespan he has, the stronger and younger he becomes. This guy has been pretty low-key to not get the attention of the HPSC. Looking through the contract, it had the amount he wanted to borrow at an interest of 20%. He was to pay it back whether or not he was unable to. Making a worried face, he picks up the pen and hovers over the dotted line. He feigns struggle before placing the pen down on the table. The boss's eye twitched at the sound of the pen being placed aside. I shouldn't be here. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Akatani gets up to leave, but his way is blocked by Daru and a few other men behind him. Now, Mr. Mikumo, Daru, I'm sure, had spent a bit of time to convince you to come down here. We wouldn't want to waste his time now, would we? Akatani looked at the criminals, and slowly his posture changed. Where before he was meek and hunched over in fear, he now stood up straight, relaxed, and the fear in his eyes was now replaced with boredom. Metal items in the room floated slightly and shot at the goons blocking the door, pushing the goons out and leaving the boss alone in his office. The boss pulled out some brass knuckles and tried to punch Akatani. Akatani was about to grab the fist, but its trajectory changed and now aiming for his liver. Surprised by this, Akatani allowed the punch to connect. The strike caused a shockwave that splinters the wooden coffee table in the room. Akatani feigned pain, moving his body with the blow, and was holding his side. Not so tough now, are ya? The boss throws a hook at Akatani's head, but before he can make contact, a hand blocks it, crushing the brass knuckles between the boss's fish and Akatani's hand. The boss backed off and looked at the remains of his weapon. Not bad. You packed quite a punch and made me go a bit faster. The boss took off the other brass knuckle and rushed Akatani with a flurry of blows comparable to All Might's speed and power after the injury, but with each blow getting stronger, the boss looked like he was getting older. Deciding to end this before he punched himself into an early grave, Akatani grabbed both of his hands and headbutt him, causing him to take a few steps back with a trickle of blood coming out of his nose. Akatani appeared right in front of him and grabbed his arm. Stop. The boss's body relaxed, and he regained some of his youth. He now looked like he was in his late 30s. Sitting him down on the tattered couch, metal from the walls burst out and restrained him. Letting go of him, he tried to break out of the metal, but he was unsuccessful. Curse you, brat. When I get out of this, you'll wish you had me finish you. Threatening a hero? You're going away for a long time, plus the extortion racket you run. What? You ain't no hero. Just an overconfident brat. Akatani's form shifted, returning to invincible in his hero costume, terrifying the now older-looking boss. And? Why are you here? I'm supposed to be asking the questions, but sure. I'm here because one of your debtors got desperate. That is all I'm going to say. I'm curious. With that much power, why haven't you taken advantage of the power gap left by the defeat of All for One? What kind of idiot would go for the grab now? All Might is still actively hunting down the remnants of those affiliated with that monster. Everyone is waiting for him to completely retire to make their move. The long game. Smart, but you mentioned everyone. Who else is with your little clique? The boss began spouting out names uncontrollably under the influence of confession, with Invincible recording it to his phone. After a few minutes, he stopped and breathed heavily from the exertion, hanging his head. Invincible grabbed his hand once again. It was nice speaking to you, Mr. Agatsuji. I'm sure your friends will be delighted to meet me. Sleep. Deal taken. Potency increased. Cell longevity. The boss doesn't get any older as his quirk is taken. Using telekinesis, Invincible picks up the boss and warps to the outside. Walking through, he sees Miruko on top of a pile of unconscious bodies while looking through her phone. About time you showed up. What took you so long? The boss was quite interesting, so we spoke for a bit. Anyone run out while you were waiting? A few did, but it seems this is everyone. Invincible threw the unconscious bodies into the pile while Miruko informed the police of the pickup. Looking down at his phone, he sees that it is 1:34 p.m. and turns to Miruko. Miruko, I gotta go, the meeting. All right, good luck. A green warp gate opened into Madam President's office, where she just so happens to be speaking with Hawks. Sorry for the intrusion. Don't worry about it, Midoriya. What brings you to my office? Just wanted to know if you had arranged someone to take me to Detnerat headquarters. We did not. Do you need someone to escort you? No, just wanted to know so I don't waste your resources. Have a good day, Madam Hawks. The two of them watch as Midoriya leaves just as quickly as he appears. Prez, he's working for you? He is contracted, but the terms were slightly in his favor. Oh, Nisa really screwed you over. The president looked at Hawks sternly. Sorry, ma'am. Appearing at the location where Detnerat was, Midoriya sees a large office building with a few office workers walking by. The bystanders were a bit surprised to see Invincible warp next to an office building. An assistant walks out to greet him. Mr. Invincible, welcome to Detnerat. Mr. Yatsubashi is waiting for you in his office. Please follow me. The two of them walked into an elevator. She scanned a card, and they were brought to the second to top floor. The elevator opened to a large office furnished with classy wooden tables and leather chairs overlooking Daika City. Yatsubashi was standing by the window looking out. He turned to face his guest. Invincible, so great to have you here. Invincible walks up to him and shakes his hand. He shakes the hand gently yet sternly. Heart attack resistance adapted. Pleasure is all mine, Yatsubashi. I've heard a lot of your plans. Yatsubashi's eyes tightened slightly. I've always planned to expand my business into the hero sector. Now with All Might's retirement coming close, heroes everywhere will need our support. That they do. Yatsubashi looks over at the assistant. Excuse us. Me and Invincible have much to speak of. In fact, have the rest of the day off. Oh, thank you, sir. The assistant got back in the elevator and left. Yatsubashi bowed slightly and gestured to the leather couches. Please sit. Can't have a guest standing around when there are perfectly fine places to sit. Invincible takes a seat on the leather couch with Yatsubashi sitting across from him. Yatsubashi speaks first. Again, I am happy you decided to visit, but I'm wondering what influenced the decision. My associate has told me a lot about you, and there is something I want to know for myself. Well, ask away. I'm more than happy to answer any doubts you have. I was wondering if you were familiar with your ancestor Chikara Yatsubashi. Yes, I am aware of him and his activism. What do you think of his message? At his point in history, he has a lot of good points. Quirks were still feared by the public, and the laws restricting them had yet to be changed since the dawn of quirks. He wanted the normalization of the quirked people, which is a noble goal. I believe that as well. Many people have unfortunately been harmed by not being able to use their full strength to defend themselves. He sheds a tear as he speaks. As it is now, all civilians need to wait for a hero to step in. They have become complacent. I'm sure you've noticed. Whenever there is a big villain fight, they will gather around to spectate and gawk at the spectacle, unknowingly endangering themselves. Well, I don't exactly blame them. They have full and absolute trust in heroes to keep them safe, but you may know of how I handle villains quietly and out of sight. No need for civilians to get in harm's way. I thought you just didn't like crowds after what happened in Osaka near Nitai's agency. I wish more heroes did it your way other than the undergrounds. Anytime a villain attacks, it affects businesses all over the city. Speaking business, how did you become CEO of this place? From what I have read about you, this is your first major public appearance. I was working here for a few years. The previous boss had taken a liking to me and made me his protege. After learning from him for a few years, he handed the keys to his kingdom to me. I don't know what about me drew his attention, but I'm grateful he gave me a chance. Oh, is that so? I guess he may just have an eye for people. If I may be so bold, can I ask if you've made any breakthroughs with your hero tech? There isn't I can reveal as of now, but there are a few items that will be coming out soon for our debut. The two of them spoke for the next hour or so about both of their lives. Near the end of it, Yatsubashi got up to his bookshelf and pulled out a book titled Meta Liberation War. I'm sure you've heard of this book. Taking the book from him, Invincible causally flips through it as he answers. Yes, I have. I was looking for a copy to better understand Destro and his ideals. Surprisingly enough, the internet has no record of his manifesto, merely mentioning its name and overall thesis. If you like, I'll let you have this copy. You can return it if you want, but I'm sure you'd be quite enraptured by its message, my friend. The phone on his desk started ringing, and a voice spoke. Sir, you have your 4 o'clock coming up. Right, I almost forgot. Thank you for reminding me. I'll be right down. The phone beeped, ending the call. I apologize. Time flies fast when in good company. No problem, Yatsubashi. I'm sure we will meet each other soon. A green warp gate appears behind Invincible, and he warps away, leaving Yatsubashi alone in his office. He let out the breath he had been holding the whole time, showing him the book as a tinge of black appeared on his face. He holds his nervously shaking hands in prayer. I thank whatever God for making him have similar ideals. I must inform the others. He took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat on his forehead and went to his meeting with his employees. Warping back inside Miruko's apartment, it was empty, so he activated Quirk Sight and looked around. Finding her in the city, chasing down something fast, he warped above to get a good look at the situation. Miruko was chasing down a car speeding down the road. The car was taking sharp turns to try and avoid Miruko, who was jumping across buildings to catch them. Miruko looked like she was getting frustrated as every time she got close they would swerve away. Invincible decides to stay out of it, pulling civilians into safety using energy construct. Eventually, the speeders hit a corner too hard and flipped the car, now hurtling into a storefront. Civilians screamed and closed their eyes, awaiting the inevitable. Not hearing the resulting crash, they opened their eyes to see the car floating midair upside down with the speeders lying awkwardly on the roof of the car. The car slowly rotated and was gently placed on the ground. The speeders slowly got out of the car and fell to their knees, breathing heavily. Miruko landed near them and picked them up by their collar. Invincible then floated down. Looks like you were busy. I had it handled. How'd the meeting go? It went fine. So what are you two in for? The speeder answered unconsciously. Bank robbery. He quickly tried to cover his mouth, but it was in vain. Very cliché. Let's get them to the police. Where is the bank? A few blocks back. They'll have people get the cash. Miruko then told him where the bank was, so he warped the car to their entrance. After that, they dropped off the villains at the station and Miruko had to stay and make the report. In the meantime, Invincible decided to go shopping and restock Miruko's fridge. By the time he was done, Miruko was waiting at the station. Hey, did you wait long? No, not at all. Let's go home. Opening a warp gate, they return home. After getting changed, Rumi walked out to see Izuku on the couch reading a book. Reading the title, it was the Meta Liberation War. People are usually put on a watch list by the HPSC if they are found with it. Rumi sat down on the couch next to Izuku. Where did you get that? From the CEO of Detnerat. We bonded from our time talking, and he gave me this book. What kind of idiot gives a hero proof of their villainy? An idiot that has done it before. Fact. Okay, that's enough hero talk. Let's see if they have a sequel to that Hitman film. The next day, Invincible appeared once again in Madam President's office through a warp gate. Morning, Prez. Morning, Invincible. Were you able to get anything from Yatsubashi? Oh, just a little. Invincible threw the manifesto on her desk, and her computer received a recording. It seemed that was the only proof she needed, as she looked quite satisfied. Good work, Invincible. We will be in contact if we require your expertise. Invincible nodded and left without a word into a warp gate. The next few weeks go by without much happening. Izuku had continued on the trail of the lone shark he had gotten from Agate Tsuji. He was quite a connected man, having his hand in many operations in the underworld. Izuku was currently hunting down an informant and broker by the alias of Jiren. He had spoken to Shimura to see if they had contact with him, and as it turned out, pretty much everyone that joined him was scouted. This man Bubegarawa was pretty close to him. They had his phone number, but said that it was more than likely deactivated after the fall of all of one and their disappearance. Invincible was currently following Jiren, as he was going to meet with some clients. Jiren walked up to two men who were standing about talking. Hello, gentlemen. What service do you require of me? Good to see you, Jiren. We need info on Invincible's movements. He has been quite the nuisance recently, but his exact location is difficult to pin down, as you know. This is going to cost you. One of the two men pulls out a brown envelope thick with cash. Jiren opens it and checks the amount. Thank you for your patronage. Currently, he should be right here. Invincible was now behind the two men, arms around their shoulders. Sleep. The two men fall unconscious away from each other, parting to allow Invincible to walk between them towards Jiren, who was fearfully backing away. Jiren, you are a difficult man to track down. Invincible, so good of you to show up. I'm sorry I wasn't easy to find. Speaking of that, how did you find me? I knew a guy who knew another guy that led me right to this other guy who told me about you. The man who can get you anything, for a price. Okay, now that you have me, what do you want? This. Invincible grabbed onto Jiren's head and used domination. Jiren's tried to pull the hand off his face, but it didn't budge. A blue glow appeared on his face, and he tried to scream, but no sound came out of his agape mouth. Invincible released his hold on him as Jiren fell to his knees. Who? Do you serve? You, sire. Oh, eternal barrel. What's with this quirk giving me new titles? Do you know anything about the support gear appearing in the black market? Unfortunately, not much, but I do know the suppliers frequent Daika City. Fact. Detnerat is the distributor of exploding villain support gear. Fact. Detnerat has sole control of Daika City. Fiction. Detnerat is working alone. Fiction. Okay, now that is confirmed. Jiren, I'm going to need you to dig up information on Detnerat and their associates. As you command, sire. Invincible warped away, leaving Jiren alone in the alleyway. Appearing back onto the rooftop, looking down on Jiren, who leaves quietly. A few days passed, and Jiren made contact saying that he had collected the information. Warping to his location, Jiren gave him a document with the info he had compiled. Yatsubashi is a well-connected man mingling with other leaders of Feel Good Incorporated, the Hearts and Mind Party, and Shueisha Publishing. After giving Madam President the information, she said she had much to plan and dismissed Midoriya. A week passes before HPSC makes its move. Now gathered on the outskirts of Daika City was a large group of heroes, including some in Class 1 then, along with enough personnel to surround the city. Invincible was also among the heroes with a horn on his head, but his place in the plan was quite simple. Warp out all civilians within the city, pull personnel out if in danger, and capture all defeated villains. Floating above the city, it looked small, so easily leveled with merely a flick. Invincible, are you in position? Yes. Begin evac. Green warp gates appeared all over the city, pulling over 10,000 civilians away and releasing the heroes into the middle of the city. As soon as that happened, the city's emergency alarm sounded, and the members of the Meta Liberation Army burst out of their homes to defeat the invading heroes. The war was fierce all over the city. Chaos ensued. Some of the heroes had gotten hurt, so Invincible warped them to the sky, healed them using Rewind, and sent them back into the battlefield. After a few minutes, some of the villains saw something in the air and tried to get a good look at it, but they didn't get the chance as more combatants got in their way. Reports of an object in the sky reached the high command. A black-haired man was sitting in a room full of monitors surveying the city, and upon getting the reports tried to get a visual of the object. Getting a camera on the object, he only sees a blurry green. But that's all he needs to confirm who it is. Attention all soldiers, Invincible is in the air. Do not engage. Retreat. The atmosphere changed as the army turned tail and ran, causing the heroes to pursue them. Invincible in the air saw that they weren't just scattering at random trying to hide. They had planned to do this gathering in the watchtower in the middle. Informing the heroes, they surrounded the tower and awaited what they had prepared. Tundra sent ice to surround the tower and prevent their escape, but as the ice was approaching, it suddenly stopped and reversed, launching itself at the heroes. Before the ice could make contact with them, they were melted away by Endeavor and his agency. Tundra looked shocked that his attack was repelled and used against him. A voice came into his earpiece. As I said during the sports festival, you must face the consequences. Tundra was downtrodden by this, flashing back to that fight and his pledge. While that was happening, nearby a man in a large blue winter coat came floating out of the tower as water tanks around the city burst, releasing shards of ice at the heroes. A lot of the personnel were stabbed and wrapped in a prepared medical tent. A shroud of ice flew at Tundra. He could have made an ice wall to block the shards, but he didn't want to give the enemy more ammunition. He couldn't just dodge as heroes that couldn't protect themselves from the attack were behind him. He needed to protect them. Consequences. Tundra's left side burst into flame, turning the ice shards coming at him directly into steam. The others looked surprised by the development. They had thought that Tundra could only produce ice. He really was the son of Endeavor. Not wasting any more time, Tundra rushed the villain and sent a jet of flame at him. The villain dodged, but his ice platform melted and was considerably smaller. This allowed the other heroes to take advantage of the opening and knock him out. The villain was warped away and appeared in front of Invincible. An awakened ice control quirk. I wonder what will happen. Ice Ply taken. Quirk synergy. Ice Ply. Ice Giant. Ice King. Ice Ply given. Sleep. Warping him to the containment area, Invincible continued to observe the operation. Now that they were inside, Invincible used weaknesses detection and quirk sight to see the positions of the heroes and villains. The fighting was fierce as both sides were taking damage, but the villains were slowly but surely pushed back. Eventually, the heroes get to the top floor where Rakia Yatsubashi, otherwise known as Redestro, is by the glass window looking out at a smoldering city. He looks up to see Invincible floating above it all like a deity, a role he wanted since taking over the mantle of his late ancestor. The skin around his eyes darkens as he turns to face the heroes. It is great to see you all here. Can it with the theatrics villain, your reign ends here? Oh, I wouldn't be too sure about that. He pressed a device on the cuff of his suit. Outside, the entire city was engulfed in dark sludge as hundreds and thousands of Nomu appeared in the city and began destroying the buildings. Near the outskirts of the city, a rumbling was heard as a mountainous man was charging through the forest straight at the city. Seeing the chaos, Invincible used radio waves to halt the thousands of Nomu in their tracks, along with the giant man who roughly stopped before entering the city. Every Nomu stops and turns to face Invincible in the air. Bring me the doctor. One of the Nomu warps away and warps back with the doctor in tow. Invincible summoned a green construct floor to let the Nomu stand on and grabbed onto the doctor's face as he struggled to get out of their grip. Fancy meeting you here, doctor. Imitaria ho. A blue glow seeps from Invincible's palm as the doctor tries to scream. The glow dims the doctor, now looking at Invincible in reverence. Who do you serve? You, my master. The one beyond singularity. Did you send all of the remaining Nomu here? No, there are still many in reserve. Suddenly, the top of the watchtower is blown away, revealing an enlarged and blackened Redestro, swinging his arms wildly, batting away the heroes, Miruko among them. Redestro glanced back up at Invincible in the sky, making his stress skyrocket and making him larger. The defeated heroes and the now loyal doctor were warped away as Invincible slowly floated down to the remaining heroes' fight with Redestro. Invincible, we could have changed this world together. Do you not believe that the people should be allowed to be free? I did agree that the law should change, but your liberation would have made it, so that only the strong would deserve peace. If quirk can be liberally used, then the ones who would reign would be those who have mind alteration quirk, the ability to control the thoughts of people. With the rarity of quirk cancelers, no one could oppose them. That's not even mentioning children with no sense of control. Redestro in anger and grief ignores the other heroes and swings at Invincible, but the blow immediately stops as soon as it makes contact. Redestro continued to swing, yet the result remained the same. To the surrounding heroes who backed off, it looked like a ragdoll being puppet to strike a wall, completely ineffectively. After a few minutes, Redestro shrinks down to his normal form as his body can no longer handle the stress placed on it. He now kneels on the ground, sitting on his legs, looking at Invincible still in the air with a bored look on his face, the sun behind him slightly darkening his features, yet not obscuring his piercing green eyes. Redestro looked at the sight in sadness with a hint of awe. What are you guys waiting for? He no longer has the will to fight. The heroes who were watching quickly got up and arrested the villain who didn't resist. Invincible looked out to the city, seeing the 100,000s of Nomu still looking at him and the mountainous man staring at him with tears threatening to leak out. Master? So, this was the end of part 5 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.